Is it Drake London time? Is it Drake London time? What I mean by that is, are we getting the wide receiver that's top 5 to 10, not top 15, not a elite wide receiver 2. We're talking about the guy people are drafting at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Big range of ADP data we're looking at, right? We see him go in the first round on occasion, but he is a mid to top of round 2 staple. You're not going to steal him away in the third round. He is even in your grandma league, a late second round pick when you're drafting with people that don't know what they're doing. And in leagues full of a bunch of sharks and really good fantasy football owners, he's going mid to, if you're lucky. And then you got to ask yourself, at what point do we draw the line and say, okay, I love him, but like I can't get any value out of this. I got to have him play a perfect season to get my value back. We'll talk about if that is a certain territory inside round 1, or if that's even taking place at the top of round number 2. Drake London, we love him. There's nothing wrong with Drake London. We're not scared of him. We're not predicting any sort of decline, or he's going to go up. He's going to absolutely have a freaking fantastic season. Like, he was wide receiver 36, I believe, last year, according to depending on your league scoring. So he's going to explode, but we got to decide if there's a line in the sand upward. You know, usually the line in the sand description for me is when a guy goes from an avoid, crosses over the line in the sand and becomes a buy. When does Drake London become, where's the line in the sand at the top part of that equation where he becomes an avoid, or not an avoid, but I'm going to go with someone else. We'll talk about that. The Fantasy Football Show begins now.
Live from the FantasyFootballShow.com studios. It's the Fantasy Football Show. Live! Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Smitty is also live whenever news breaks.
So London's going around 9 to 15. I don't think we can even say, anything concrete about that. Like, you might draft on Sleeper, you might draft on ESPN, you might draft on Yahoo, you might draft in Best Ball, and it's all over the map, so there's no real way to define his value with certainty. But I would say it is definitely, not going to be in this upper part of round 1, but you're probably looking at this lower part, maybe 1.11, 1.12, down into the, we'll call it 2.06. I would say 07 is the latest you'll probably find him. So London's going in the 1.11 inside. This is round, we'll put round 2 in this big box so you can kind of see what we're working with. This part's the tail end of the first round. This is the first, this is the second. That's a big range. Like, here is tough to draft him. Drafting him as your number 1 drafted player, your first drafted player, your first round pick, it's hard. I don't know that I can say that's great value when you have, like, let's say Gibbs sitting there, or you have a guy like St. Brown or something like that. However, both of those guys are gone, and you're looking at Garrett Wilson. Gibbs, St. Brown are gone. Hall is gone. Eventually, too many of these guys go, then somebody else is going to fall. But, like, I'm okay deciding between Garrett Wilson and London at the 12-13 turn, at the 11 and 14 picks. I mean, I'd rather you take him in the second round. I know in some cases we're talking about, like, splitting hairs, like taking someone at 13 or 14 versus 11 or 12. It's essentially the same thing. If you got the 12 and 13 picks, it's back-to-back picks anyway. But just for argument's sake, in terms of ranking these players 1 through 12, I don't want him in 1 through 12. I want him in 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 as just a rule of thumb. So that means for me, even though his ADP is in here, I'm going to say don't go near him in round 1 just to be safe. Package in, the amount of risk that you need packaged in for anybody, right? So we're not going to draft him at the top end of his ADP. I'm okay with anywhere inside round number 2. Second round, anywhere is okay. Now, of course, that depends on who's there. You know, I'm tempted to say I like Gibbs and even Kiren early, you know, as much as I like the London pick. But I could definitely say give me London and Gibbs. That's fine. London and Gibbs, I'm fine with that. But I think the real winners are going to be the people that grab him in the mid-second round. Now, there's a lot of concern over like what you're getting, right? What do we know London to be other than an underused player that we think could have dropped 1,400 yards and 10 plus touchdowns on 90 receptions plus last year? We know him as a 69 reception, 905 and 2 touchdown wide receiver. The crazy part is when you look at contested catches, he was in the top 5 in the NFL, no matter what way you slice up that contested catch category stat. He was in the top 5 in getting his hands in contested catch situations. Now, you could say, okay, that's Ritter. That's not going to be the case this year, and that's a weird stat because Ritter's throwing these footballs in the weirdest places, and but London's so capable and versed in contested catches that it makes him a very attractive riser. It's a category of stat that I love so much that I think depicts where a player could go because they're such a dominant force. They're aggressive and they can be trusted by their quarterback, and they're proven in an area that takes a while to get versed in, right? So if he's a contested catch monster in the NFL, and yeah, he hasn't gotten the touchdowns he needs. He hasn't been throwing the right footballs, but he's a contested catch monster and veteran. Guess what's going to happen when he gets handed 2 quarterbacks, one of which is going to succeed with him? He's going to probably be a 10-plus touchdown player. Contested catch monsters that get targets in the red zone score double-digit touchdowns. So London, to me, feels like if I had to throw a number on London's 2024 projection, I would probably say London gets you 90 receptions for 1,300 yards and 11 TDs. That's pretty damn good. And if we look at those numbers, and again, last year he was wide receiver number 36, depending on your scoring. That is awful. That is absolutely brutal. That is just a waste of talent. And that's where the concern lies, because we don't, as much as we want him to be this, we haven't seen him be this. But he's being handed 2 quarterbacks. He's pretty much quarterback proof. He's got Cousins and Penix Jr. Nothing can happen to this guy in terms of the targets being there. He's protected. This is why I love the Atlanta Falcons doing what they did. This is why the Falcons are genius at the end of the day. Bringing Penix Jr. in, bringing Cousins in, something's going to pop. If it doesn't, they'll shove the other guy in and, you know, it'll be amazing. Here's London's, real quickly before I go back to that, I'm sidetracking myself. London's only 2 touchdowns were inside weeks 1 through 4. Look at that red down the right, far right column. 0 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 0 touchdowns, 1 touchdown. Never scores another touchdown the rest of the year. This is Arthur Smith. This is what has me a little concerned about Arthur being in Pittsburgh. And I've gone on record saying that if Mike Sullivan isn't heavily involved in the passing attack and has a boatload of the control, I will ultimately be concerned again. You know, I've made it abundantly clear that I want nothing to do with Arthur Smith. I even said before Fields ended up in Pittsburgh that if Fields went to Pittsburgh, I wouldn't draft him in fantasy. But that was as the starter with no rising up from, you know, the abyss. And things are different with his back against the wall, because now I like drafting Fields because he costs you nothing and he's a secret weapon quarterback, third QB bench stash that could come out of nowhere and be a league winner. So if Fields were there to start, it'd be different. His value would be different. My cost of entry would be different. My advice might even be different. But when you talk about Arthur Smith and you see what he just did to London, it does make you remember there is some concern in Pittsburgh in the offense that they got going on under this guy's command. I just hope, and like I said, if Mike Sullivan, who did such an amazing job with Mason Rudolph last year and getting that offense going, and Pickens, and if Mike Sullivan has a kung fu grip on the offense and or the quarterback room and the play calling, even like if it's all Arthur Smith calling the offensive plays across the board, at some point I will be worried. And I might circle back to being worried. You might see me pumping the brakes again on Arthur Smith in a Arthur Smith play calling led offense. I do not like Arthur Smith for that. If he's in charge of the run game, he's not heavily involved in the passing attack. He has something to do with it. Obviously, the two commingle. But if he's like in charge of calling all the plays, and we need to get like a Pittsburgh Steeler. I don't even know if anybody knows the answer to this yet, though. You know, you could get someone on to speculate, but I don't know. I don't know that we'll have a good handle on it till later. But if for any reason we find out Arthur Smith's in full command of this situation from top to bottom, there's a panic button to be set, and it's stats like this that remind you: 1 TD in week 2, 1 TD in week 4, no touchdowns the rest of the way. And this week 14 was his only really good week. He did have this 125, so 2 good weeks. I'm sorry. Week 6, he had 9 receptions for 125, and then literally garbage. 91 yards was good. Garbage pretty much the rest of the way. The 78-yard game was okay. The 91-yard game was okay, but he didn't have any explosion games because there's no touchdowns for one. But this 10 receptions for 172 was phenomenal. Phenomenal. We don't have a lot to go on, people. 905 and 2 touchdowns. 905 and 2 tutties. Not very good. But if we go back to my projection and we say, okay, this is what I feel very comfortable with, because this man has there's a backup plan to the backup plan. London's pretty much invincible as long as he stays healthy and on the field. He's got 2 quarterbacks to deliver these numbers I feel very confident in. And if we look at what these numbers equate to, and we go over and we look at a Devontae Adams, 103, 1144, 8 tutties. Okay, Diggs, 107, 1183, 8 tutties. Keenan Allen, 108, so the receptions are a little higher. And I wouldn't put it past him to have 100 receptions, you know. But let's just say it's 90. We're trying to be safe. We're trying to be, you could even put this at 1,200 yards if you want. You know, I guess, you know, I would say this. I would say there's only, out of all the receivers in the National Football League, let's see here. Was London, let me see if London was wide receiver 36 in the scoring format. Yeah, he was 36. Wow, that's awful. Wide receiver 36. If we sort by wide receiver yards, we had only 7 wide receivers that finished with 1,300 plus yards. So even if we were to dumb this down to 1,250, just to be safe, and say that he doesn't have a top 5 or 6 wide receiver yardage season, let's just call it 1,250. Let's find a 1,250 yard receiver. Here's one right here. This is perfect. Mike Evans, wide receiver 9, 79 receptions, 1,255, 13 touchdowns. It's pretty much right in line with this stat line. If we go right above him, Nico Collins, 8 touchdowns, 80 receptions, 1,297. Right above that, we have 96 receptions, 1,364, 8 touchdowns for DJ Moore. Ayuk, wide receiver 7 in this format right here. 75 receptions, 1,342, 7 touchdowns. We could even dumb this down to 9. This right here, let's say it's 95, 1,250, and 9. Well, then he is right in line with wide receiver, I would say 7. 6 to 7. So his floor is probably wide receiver I would say floor is wide receiver 10. His ceiling is wide receiver 5. London can be wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 10, but the gap between floor and ceiling are not that far apart, meaning that if you do end up taking him, let's say in that 12, 13, 14 overall territory, I mean, it's pretty damn safe. Your upside's hard to argue, right? How much upside do you have from number 11 overall? If you're drafting him at the 1.11 and you take London there, your upside's limited. Your ceiling value, you're drafting him kind of at near the ceiling value right here. He's right below it. He's about to crash through it. Anything higher, you'd be drafting him above the ceiling. So his ceiling value is right here, 1.11. His floor is probably 10. That's his floor. And you're getting him in between there. That's fine. You're getting, worst case scenario, you're getting second round value return on your second round pick, or you're taking him at the very end of round 1. I'm okay with it. It's tough to say though, like, past that, you look at these numbers and you just, you have nothing but speculation here. You have nothing to go on other than contested catch percentages, certain categories he absolutely did well in, and the fact that he never had a quarterback, he never had an opportunity, and now he gets 2 quarterbacks, both of which can throw the ball down the field. Kirk Cousins proved he can do that just fine. Penix Jr. proved he can do that just fine. And having both of them is the most secure quarterback situation a wide receiver 1 could have. Some would say London might be one of the safest wide receiver 1s in fantasy. Maybe he doesn't have top 1 to 4 likely potential. It's certainly in the cards. Could he be wide receiver 3? Anything's possible. Of course he could be wide receiver 3. Is he likely to be wide receiver 3 or 4? Probably not. But is he the safest wide receiver drafted below, like, let's say, the top 2 or 3? Well, no, let's just say overall. What is his likelihood of being the safest wide receiver drafted inside the top 12 or 13 overall players to remain a second round producer no matter what? If he stays on the field, he is probably in the top 2 or 3 out of all wide receivers because of his quarterback situation, which is locked and loaded. Absolutely love him. Drake London to the moon.
To the moon.
He's a part of the Smitty Bunch.
It's a story of a little Kyler raising 3 little monsters of his own. None had hair of gold but the tight end, the youngest one a goat. The story of a man named Penix raising 3 little Penixes of his own. They were all so messed up from their former father. They were all alone. The Penix met the Kyler, and they decided it was much more than a hunch. So they decided to collide and create a family. The Smitty Bunch, the Smitty Bunch, the Smitty Bunch. I give you monsters and Penixes and Bijons, the Smitty Bunch.
If that doesn't explain to you, A, why London is a fantastic pick regardless, really, when it comes down to it, or B, why I'm wearing this shirt, now you know. Now you know. Phone lines are open. Let's talk shop, specifically around London if we can, and anything else you have on top of that. The Fantasy Football Show phone lines brought to you by the Attic.shop are open.
Call into the show. Call into the show.
Okay, hit me with what you got. Running back first round for me, says Ray G. Tyreek Jefferson. What was that question? Tyreek Jefferson or Jamar Chase? Probably Tyreek, Chase, and JJ in that order, but you could definitely argue that up and down until you're blue in the face. What's up, Travis? You're live.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, I'm good.
I've liked London like a lot since he got drafted, just because it's so rare you get a guy with his size. A lot of these guys are closer to 6 feet tall, and that doesn't mean they're any worse, but his size just is an outlier, and I kind of like see him being able to be maybe like a Mike Evans, with maybe an even higher ceiling, because Mike Evans didn't always have like the greatest quarterback play. I mean, he's always had decent quarterbacks, but until Brady came, he really didn't, have the best team all the time. So, but like just that, ability to be consistent, and like you said, the contested catches, and really, I mean, Mike Evans, looking at him, he averages like 76 catches a year, I think. So I could even see a little more than that, but in that realm, pretty consistent every year. Now that he's got a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, one, contested catches are a very, very, very good indicator of like taking that next step or being, a capable player, because I mean, that's what it's all about in the NFL. Separation. Can you get open? And so contested catches are a phenomenal way of protecting yourself into good completion percentage for your quarterback, and just pulling in the most amount of passes you can with the most amount of targets you can get, because like, you're gonna catch the ones where you're wide open, but for this guy to freaking pull in on average more than anybody else in a contested catch situation, and then you give him, now that was with Ritter, you give him now two quarterbacks that can thread the needle, drop a raindrop in there. Now what's he gonna do? So that's why I say this 2 touchdown thing's an outlier in the wrong direction. Definitely 10 plus touchdown capable for sure. 1,200, 1,300 yards. We'll see how high he can get up. Again, when I sort by yardage, it's actually pretty surprising. You got Tyreek Hill with 1,799. God, he had a lot of yards. CeeDee Lamb 1,749. He had a lot of yards. Amon-Ra 1,515. Puka Nacua 1,486. AJ Brown 1,486, and then boom, 1,364, 1,342, 1,297. We're at wide receiver 8 for yardage at least. Mm-hmm. So you look at that and you say, and also looking at this, you don't see one wide receiver in the top 5 that doesn't have over 1,400 yards. So he has to get probably over 1,400 yards to be a top 5 wide receiver. So we just got to be careful not to bump him too high. Like where he's going now at 11, a lot of times he'll go at like 11, 10. I haven't seen him go higher than 10. I've seen him go 10 a couple times, but I've seen him go 11 quite a bit lately. And that's so close to the 12, 13 turn. I'm not like alarmed by it, but at the same time, I think it comes down to like, the reason I would draft London 11 would be because I like the running back so much in like Kiren and Achane and Barkley that I could switch in my mind drafting one of those guys instead of getting, like a Gibbs or Breece Hall or whatever, and say, give me my second round running back in round 1. I'm sorry, give me my second round wide receiver in round 1 in London, and I'll swing down and get the guy that people shouldn't be letting fall into round 2 anyway, Kiren. So London and Kiren are a fun, start to a team. Barkley in round 2, London in round 1, that's a fine start too. Because I could argue Barkley deserves to be at 11, 12 overall. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay with London at 11. I think the line in the sand is probably 11, only just to protect in the fact that like throw in 3 running backs, let's say 2 or 3 running backs in my mind. Sometimes wide receivers, dominate in best ball, but you throw in 2, 3 running backs. Now, again, you have to have 1,400 yards for him to earn value higher than 11. So I'm not saying he's not capable of it, but
no, I don't want him, like you said, unless it's at that turn. I don't want him as my first player. I want him as my second player in drafts, and that's why I think he has top 5 talent, top 5 capability, But that's why I say the Mike Evans comparison, not just because they're, big guys and I see similarities in their games, but in terms of rankings, where Mike Evans, I don't think Mike Evans was, normally a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, but he was always in that back half of the top 10, back half of the top 12 receivers. Like, I'm pretty sure you could look probably almost every year. He was probably 6 to 15 in that range, just every single year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm okay. I'm okay.
London along those lines.
I'm okay with 11, only because you're talking about your 11. You're almost getting the back-to-backs right there. But
Right.
you're getting really, really close to okay, you're pushing it, and I hate to see him go higher. That's all I'm saying. I don't want him to go higher. He's not perfectly placed, actually. He's at his ceiling, but yeah.
I think there is an argument that and it's close. Puka at 9.5 ADP, I love Puka, but there's an argument that Puka had his best year he'll ever have, possibly, and maybe I think there's an argument. Who would you rather have?
Well,
we haven't seen it from London yet, though. So,
yeah. Well, I would say
that
the guys that are right there. I think St. Brown's in the tier up here, so we're gonna leave St. Brown alone up there. Puka's almost in this tier too, though. I mean, some could argue it, but if we're talking about Puka, Garrett Wilson, London, this is a tough order here. I probably give the benefit of the doubt to Puka and put him one of these 3. And I probably give Garrett Wilson in London a tie. I'd say number 2 tie. Because I really, the reason I can say that is if I had, let's say 12 picks in 2 different separate leagues, I would go one and one on the other.
Mm-hmm.
Puka, sometimes I have more of a instinct to draft him in one league, and if I got the same pick in another league, I'd just go Puka again. But Garrett Wilson, I want a lot of shares of. I guess I think we're all a little traumatized, whether people want to admit it or not, about Rodgers going down. And I'm so excited, but I think we're just a little bit okay, give me him at 12, and I hope I crush with it. But it's really hard to go higher. Doesn't mean we doubt Garrett Wilson. It just means we're trying to prepare for the worst. This whole Penix thing, if Penix Jr. was in New York, I could probably put Garrett Wilson as high as 1.8. If he had Penix Jr. and Aaron Rodgers, and I felt the same way about London security at QB, I could probably move Garrett Wilson higher. Because at the end of the day, I think this is the best player of these 3. I think Puka's so good. This is not a knock on Puka. They're neck and neck, but just in terms of pure talent, I think this guy's grit. This guy's very talented, super talented, but part of part of Puka's his motor, his grit, his determination, his drive, mixed with Sean McVay and mixed with McVay's system and how McVay just feeds them. He just feeds them over and over and over. You take that away, and Puka, I don't think, is as good as Garrett Wilson. However, we don't need to take that away because that's his situation. So that's what makes him kind of a dog and makes him almost in this tier. But let's say Stafford goes down or something, and then McVay doesn't have the quarterback he needs to feed Puka. Then all of a sudden Puka kind of just how far does he drop? Does he drop 4 or 5 wide receiver spots? Does he drop 1? Does he drop none? We'll have to see. Garrett Wilson, if Aaron Rodgers goes down, he certainly drops 1, 2, 3, 4. We saw it last year. We saw him do really well, but his touchdowns were not there. London.
We saw his floor, I think, though.
London is the safest, even safer than Puka in some respects, even safer than Garrett Wilson in some respects, even though he does have a rookie QB that I like a lot named Jordan Travis that they drafted, but he's coming back from an ankle injury, but he does look good. This is the most secure wide receiver of these 3. He just is. It doesn't mean that he's going to necessarily outscore him, because safety doesn't necessarily mean that the negative part, the risky part's going to go down the way we're saying it could go down. If Stafford stays healthy and this whole Rams offense stays healthy all year long, then the risk level making me say he's safer, we never have to face and look in the face. But if Puka loses his quarterback, he drops. Garrett Wilson loses his quarterback, he drops. If Drake London loses his quarterback, he may go up because Penix Jr. could maybe be better. So that's why this is really, at the end of the day, when you do say is 11 the highest we take him, I don't know. Maybe I just convinced myself to go to 10. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, I think I mentioned it before with Garrett Wilson, is I truly think we saw his absolute floor, because they do have Tyrod Taylor, who's not great, but he can handle an offense. And, I think we saw, so there is a little safety baked into Wilson's floor, in my opinion, because I think we saw it, which is, he won't kill you, but, it's obviously not what you want if you're drafting that high. But London has that safety baked in now, like you said, though, with Penix there.
Rockout, thank you for the $2 hauler. Elvis with a $2 hauler. London is more Pitman than Evans, not 2.1. That's a rough take. I respect it. I disagree with it, but I do respect it because, look, we don't know. You have every right, and you have a good argument that I think will be proven wrong, but you have a good argument to say, what do we have that proves that he's 2.1 capable? So, you make a valid argument, and I don't have much ammunition other than my gut instinct. So there's not much to really say on this. Because you're looking at a guy that he doesn't have the same quarterback situation, but he is only bringing 905 and 2 touchdowns to the table. So we'll see what happens. But Elvis doesn't like him at that 2.1. He thinks he's Michael Pittman and no better, which would make him a third rounder, I guess, for Elvis. Elvis, you take him in the third round with a smile, I assume. I'd take him in the mid-second with a big grin on my face. At 11 or 12 or 13, I'm kind of gulping, and then I'm taking him. And it's not because I don't love him. It's just for the reason that Elvis just pointed out. We haven't seen it, so it's kind of like you're drafting him on spec. And, frankly, you're ignoring potentially a Gibbs or a Kiren or a Barkley. And, you feel, I assume a lot of you feel really good about all those guys. And so London is more of an unknown, and you're just taking the position maybe when you're swaying that way. And that's okay if all things feel equal and you're going to go wide receiver, and I get it. But, that's probably where my uneasy feeling is because, do I want Kiren over London? I really do. But, it's all about putting, not putting all your eggs in one basket. So I'm not taking Kiren at 11 and 12 and 13 and 14, especially if I do a ton of best ball drafts. Underdog Fantasy, guys, click the link that I'm dropping in the live chat. And actually, Underdog just dropped this new beauty for us here. 50% match on your first deposit up to $250. So if you drop 200, they'll give you 100. You drop 250, they'll give you they'll give you all the way up to 250. So essentially, you drop 300, they're still only going to give you 50% of 250. But they'll match 50% up to 250. So that link I just dropped in the live chat. But Underdog Fantasy, what was I saying? I was about to make a point. What were we talking about right then?
Pitman.
Pitman, no.
Pitman. And then,
Kiren. Kiren?
Kiren, yep.
I think I was talking about Kiren. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is what I was going to say. So, do I want Kiren over London? The general answer from me is yes. I think Kyron's worth a top 6-7 overall pick. I'm not drafting him there. I'm not a moron. I feel like everyone's off base. I think everybody doesn't know what they're doing when it comes to Kiren. I'm happy about that. I've got a big smile on my face. I'm scooping Kiren up like clockwork in round 2. Just scooping him up like he's free. Because everybody's running away. Everybody's running away from Kiren. And I'm just grabbing him free of charge. Over and over again. But there is a a don't put all your eggs in one basket philosophy that I hold very, very true this year to my heart. Because last year was brutal, having Burrow go down, AR5 go down, having all these players go down. And you got to diversify, especially in best ball. And if I'm gifted Kiren Williams at 15, 16, 18, 14, like clockwork, then I need to exercise the gift that I'm giving to have that all day long, right? And utilize other strategies at the picks 10, 11, 12, 13. Because I'm going to have so many opportunities to get Kiren. And if you're like me, even though you're trying to diversify, you can't help yourself. If Kiren's sitting there at 17 or 18, I keep taking him. I can't diversify. He's sitting there, I just keep taking him. I can't help it. So since I know that addiction is going to be there at 17, 18, 15, and I'm going to overwhelm my Kiren shares in that draft slot alone, like in the 15, 16, 17, 18, then guess what? I need to force myself to approach different strategies in the 10, 11, 12, 13 territories. So that's why I don't take Kiren over London on almost any occasion, because I don't need to. But that's because of diversification. If I was given one draft, you've only let me draft in one best ball draft for the entire year, I think Kiren would be on my team in the second round no matter where I had to take him. Just to give people a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'd ask Elvis. What was his name? Was it Elvis?
Yeah, it was Elvis.
Yeah, Elvis. Like what makes him think he's more like Pitman? Because I understand where you're drafted doesn't mean everything. We saw it with Puka. People can rise up, but just purely talent, skill wise, he was a top 10 pick. The NFL sees him as a elite prospect, and he's come in and with no quarterback, hasn't scored. So I guess if you're just going purely off the numbers, you could say that.
I think I could answer for Elvis.
Players too.
I think I could answer for Elvis and say that at the end of the day, we still remember our valuation and prediction that London was going to be a top 5 to 10 wide receiver. And I think similar to Bijan, we're staying true to our Bijan could be the number 1 overall player. And even though it didn't happen for either one, I don't know if I could speak for you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but had we just had the Achilles recovering Kirk Cousins as our only quarterback option for Bijan, London, and Kyle Pitts, dare I say, we would be holding our breath, even though we are doubling down again on Bijan being running back 1 or 2. We are doubling down again on London being another 5 to 10 type wide receiver this year. We are doubling down on that. We are, because we believe that so strongly walking into last year. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I 100% am telling you, because I feel this with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall a little bit, right? I would be doubling down again, but I would be saying, please, fantasy gods, please don't do this to us again, because we will be wrong even though we're right. And with London and Bijan, we feel as secure as can be. There's no concern for me. I don't sleep with one eye open. I don't sleep with my back against the wall. I sleep like a baby. And I know that Bijan and London and Kyle Pitts are 100% protected, and it feels really good. So, I can say that about London. So what I'm trying to say is, to speak to Elvis, I don't think Elvis may have ever felt that way about London, because if he did, and you handed Elvis the Penix and Cousins situation, Elvis should snap back to his London's top 5 to 10. And if he doesn't, it tells me that he never really saw what we saw in London, which we haven't seen yet. And so we're doubling down, and he's like, I never was on board.
My question, I guess that's a better way to put it. What did he see London as, when London was drafted, or even going into last year?
Yeah, it couldn't have been a top 5 wide receiver, or I think he'd snap back into it. You know what I mean?
And just real quick, and I'll let you get to other people. I wouldn't worry. I mean, it's awesome to have Penix there, so now I really don't worry about anything. But I just think having Arthur Smith gone is enough to put him into maybe not a top 5 guy, but flirting with a top 10 overall wide receiver.
Yeah.
Now you put in the QB situation, I feel great.
What swings me back into the place of concern, like when we talk about Arthur Smith, we remind ourselves about Arthur Smith, and then we look at Drake London's game log here that Arthur Smith helped absolutely destroy. And we say to ourselves, like, look at this pitiful stat line that had some good stuff in it, but it was like 12 targets, 11 targets, 10 targets in those games. He did well. That 172 game is, I think, a definition of what Drake London brings to the table, that he can bring to the table 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 times a year. 150 plus yard game, at least 1 or 2 170 yard receiving games. That's Drake London. Drake London getting 2 touchdowns and 170 yards on 12 receptions in one game this year, maybe 2. That's Drake London. And you can't say that about a lot of players. There aren't very many capable 200-yard receiver type players in the NFL, and that can do that really anytime they're getting fed. And that's why I say his possession numbers, his dominating, possession type catches are why he's that kind of guy. Mike Evans is that kind of guy because he dominates, the contested catch, and he can get that to that 170 to 200 yard mark if he gets that 12 targets. So, because it's going to require a couple downfield strikes where you're catching the football with 2 or 3 people in your face and you're catching a 70-yard touchdown bomb. And then there's another one. Remember Randy Moss? Didn't he have 3 receptions, 3 touchdowns? What was that one stat line that he had? Let me find that.
Something ridiculous, yeah. While you're finding that, I'll just say London, he only had 10-plus targets 3 times last year. And 2 out of the 3 times he went for 125 and 172, So it's like we haven't even come close to seeing what his peak is, aside from those little blips that they've fed him.
Here's that Randy Moss.
Elvis.
This is amazing. This Randy Moss thing. This is a screenshot of the game. 3 catches, 163, 3 touchdowns. I have arguments with Niner fans all the time of who the best receiver of all time was. And I'm not saying it wasn't Rice because, he hit the numbers and I get it, but
he's amazing.
If I had to pick one wide receiver to play for my team at their prime, and I had to win the game by throwing to that receiver, I know Niner fans could be like, sure, it's Randy Moss for me. I just think the way he played, it reminds me a lot of how Jordan played in basketball and how he was different and he reinvented some things. And Randy Moss was just a whole nother level. 3 catches, 163, 3 ties.
If I had to pick a guy, it would be Moss for one game. It would be Moss and then probably Terrell Owens for one game.
Megatron.
Yeah, I think Megatron's up there, but I don't think anybody's up there with Randy Moss, in my opinion, anyway. Alpha says $2 hauler, same height, weight, speed, both USC. He's talking about Pitman.
He had one before that too.
He did.
So they're identical players, which I just don't think they are. They depth of target. They run,
Yeah, I hear you, Elvis. I disagree just because I don't love Pitman like everybody else, and I love London, so I'm not gonna see this the exact same. Let me go to Rock Out real quick and then over to Young. Rock Out, what's up, Mars man? Rock Out.
Yeah, from your last 2 drafts with the 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers, what's your thoughts on those 2 drafts, going those strategy?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but running back, I like a lot when you get DK and Devontae Smith and receivers like that, or even if you just take one of them, I can get by drafting
two running backs.
Yeah, I can go.
Like
I can go
Gibbs
Gibbs
and
and Hall.
Kyren.
I can go Gibbs, Hall, Hurts, and Devontae Smith, and I'm not scared of it. I'll take JSN and Keon Coleman and guys like that. And people might not like my wide receiver 2 and 3, but I'll make it work to stack those other positions all day long. It's kind of like, it's weird when people say, I hate it and I love it. I love it because I know a person's just, running their mouth, or they don't really know what they're saying. But I love when you the way you got to look at it is this. Think of it like you have only so much water to fill up these cylinders, okay? So here's your RB, here's your wide receiver, and here's your tight end. So you have only so much water to fill up these cylinders, and the water could really only fill up all of the cylinders, let's say to 50%, or maybe above 50%, if you were to fill them evenly into all of them. So what fantasy football is all about, in a nutshell, is filling these spots up, right? And if you fill up, the quarterback all the way up, and you've got Hurts right here, okay? So you got Jalen Hurts. You fill up this, and you got Kyren, and you got Gibbs, or you got Hall and Gibbs and Hurts. You're absolutely maxed out. You filled all your water over here. You have probably enough water to fill up these, down to this level, right? Because you've done this. So if you take Devontae Smith, now all of a sudden you're out of water, essentially. You've got your quarterback full to the rim. You got your RBs full to the rim. You took a guy that if you drafted 3 of them, you'd be full to the rim, but you only drafted 1. So now you gotta find ways to fill this up in this area. Okay, and even in the tight end spot. You take Luke Musgrave and Kraft right here. So you have this really nice, pardon the pun, crafty tight end duo. You fix that problem there. You got Devontae Smith here, which is fantastic. And again, if you had 3 of those, you would have a full wide receiver, vial of water here. But now you have to go to Keon Coleman, you have to go to JSN, you have to go to these. But then somebody will come along and look at your team and go, hey, you got weak wide receivers. Like, no shit. Like, what do you, like, that I mean, that's just stupidity to me when people say things like that. Like, we know that this, are you not looking at the quarterback and running back room and the 1 wide receiver that we have? We're full. The house is full over here. The house is full over here. Of course I'm going to have weak wide receivers. But the whole thing that I'm going to do is if I land these 2 wide receivers, and at the end of the day, JSN becomes a monster, Keon Coleman becomes one of the top rookies, and I end up getting a full vial of water over here, at the end of the day, then I win the championship, and everyone's crawling to try and get to second place. So it's like you could say till you're, blue in the face, but the wide receivers are weak. Or let's say you draft 3 wide receivers and you get Mahomes later, and you have this empty wide receiver running back room, just a completely empty, vial right here. And then you take, Benson, and you take Connor, and you take Zamir White, and you take, Spears, and you got this like really crafty running back room. You take, who else is on our list of, like, I don't know. Let's say you take Guerendo, and CMC goes down, and he's like the dude. And then all of a sudden you got these full vials of water here, and your resources are allocated, and all of a sudden you smash on Benson because he gets in there. He's a top 5 running back. You get Spears to produce sporadically like that, and then Guerendo comes in the final 4 weeks, and he's a starter in San Francisco. Then you win the league. You're like, that's what it's all about. It's an allocation of resources, and where you're weakest, whether best player available created a running back void for you, or created a wide receiver void for you, or whatever. It's all about landing those sleepers, and if you do, you win. If you don't, you still might hang, and try and squeak out a win, but in the championship. But like you land the void spot of your team, and you win. That's why I do stack my teams this way. I'm not a kind of person that I like balance, but I do very much. That's why I go quarterback this way. The reason I go either Hurts, Josh Allen, or I take Mahomes, and I always traditionally have one of those guys, is because I feel like not filling one of these up all the way is the smartest way for me to smash, because all I got to do is focus on this one void right here, or this one void right here, or whatever. So that's why I always fill that resource bucket up. That's the way I like to explain fantasy to people, because they just get hyper focused on, why your wide receivers look weak. Like, look around. Like, okay,
they're running back there.
Yeah, let me take away from the stud running backs that I have over here, and now I got better receivers. How do you like my team now? Well, your running backs look weak. Like, well, I just took away from my running back room, so you'd be happy with my wide receivers. So.
Your team is trash because your wide receivers.
Yeah. All right, Young, what's up, Young? You're live. Nicholas, no offense, but like, we just went, you said you missed it. Can I tell you about London? I mean, I got a 15-minute show on it, man. I can't really just review the whole thing for you. But in a nutshell, he's a great 11 to 14 overall player that is going to probably crush these numbers. He's probably going to be with the safety and security at quarterback, having two quarterbacks. It's like, how does he not have a 1,300-yard, 10-touchdown season? But go rewatch it. I can't redo the whole show for you, pal, but I appreciate you. Go ahead, Young. You're live.
So I think it was like 2 weeks ago or something. I called in 2-3 weeks ago, and I was talking about Isaac Guerendo, and I was like, hey, Smitty, you think like he's a good stash, just in case CMC? And you were kind of like not really feeling it because you were bringing up Mitchell and Mason and stuff. But last time I watched, you had like the handcuff thing. You've been doing the handcuff thing. What changed since like the last time we talked for you to kind of be more on board with what I was saying?
But it depends on where what you're talking about. Like, cost of entry, he's phenomenal because it costs you nothing. He's the very end of your draft. There's nothing to worry about. As far as trying to predict when you're cuffing, I think this is more along the lines of where I don't know that what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. And what we're kind of talking about then was CMC. How do you back him up? Because that's where our conversation was. Who's the backup? Is it Guerendo? You can't draft him as the backup and just feel comfortable because he might not be in the lineup the moment you need him in week 4, week 3, week 2. But if you're drafting a standalone share, then he's great. Now, the cuffing board right here, this is the top cuffs in the National Football League. This right here, if Guerendo was the for sure backup, you might see this at 1. This assumption here is that if he was to claim the backup role, if there's talk about him not securing this up or having a good shot at it, because Shanahan does a little bit better allowing rookie running backs to have a role versus rookie receivers, but he a lot of times can doghouse a rookie. And so if there's no signs of him being the backup, then this will be removed. So, but I would say because he's so cheap, you probably can just grab Mitchell and Guerendo for right now. And some people might not want to do that, but then I'd say don't draft CMC. If you're not willing to try and cuff all three of them, and you don't have a big enough roster, because some people have like a 8-man bench or a 4-man bench, you can't do that. But if you have big benches, then you got to cuff them. But the standalone value for Guerendo is much higher than the cuffing value. Even though we're making an assumption on this board that he gets the role. If he doesn't get the role, this is going to drop. Like, he's nowhere. There's no way that this cuffing situation will even be on this. It'll be like down here, So, or it'll be even down here where it's like we don't know who the cuff is, or Mitchell, if he's the backup, jumps into the cuff role, but it's still not as valuable because he always gets hurt. So he'll like rank in this territory. But this is on the assumption that Guerendo gets the job because he's that good, and cuffing CMC is a very difficult proposition right now. Because not only do you have to cuff him to the best guy, but you have to try and predict who the player is going to go, what player is going to go in when, and if Guerendo goes in late in the season, but it never needs to go in, like that's when he's ready, and he goes down in week 2 and 3, and Guerendo's not ready, then all of a sudden you screwed up on your cuff, and now Mitchell's the backup. So it's never been about Guerendo's been a huge sleeper on the channel as far as talent and upside. Where does he go? Could he be a starter somewhere? Could he go to Houston and rise up, and Mixon falter and Guerendo goes in? I wanted Guerendo to go somewhere great. He went somewhere that was not so great because Christian McCaffrey's not retiring, after this season. So you have at least 2 years of Guerendo not being the starter somewhere. So his value took a hit, but his upside's huge if he gets in there.
Yeah, I got a good feeling about him too, just in case, that does end up happening with, Lord forbid, with CMC. But, they traded up. I think they traded up in like the 4th round to go get Guerendo. So I think it's kind of like he went to get his guy, kind of a thing. So we'll see.
Yeah, but the problem with the 4th round value is that, and while again I'm not as big of a proponent on this as a lot of other people that don't leave any room for any variance and stuff. I hate that. I hate when people are like, the low draft capital, or the fact that the wide receiver, not a running back, because running back I agree with. You can't be old as a running back. But a wide receiver, if he's 1 year older than the average breakout wide receiver in college, and someone's literally saying he can't do well at the NFL level, I think that's stupidity. I feel like running backs are different because their shelf life is defined. It's finite. It's absolute, But with a guy like Guerendo and Shanahan in the system, like I don't know. Saying 4th round. So 4th round, the draft capital part's also a part that people talk to a lot that I don't really love that people make absolute, but 4th round does make it, even if you trade up, 4th round does make it hard to count on the player, because it's not that they won't give them a chance, but if they falter at all, they don't hang around and wait for you. That's kind of why the draft capital for running backs is a concern. It's not like, oh, he was a 4th rounder, we'll never give him a shot. Like, that's what people kind of take from that, I think. But it's more about, okay, you draft a running back in round 2, he can go out and punch a camera guy, like Rasheed Rice. He can go out and do this, and they're going to be like, we got a lot invested in this guy. Let's give him another shot. But if that happens with your 4th rounder, or your 4th rounder can't stay healthy for a whole year, you move on. So the commitment level is a lot lower. That's what it's all about. If he delivers when called upon, won't matter if he's a 4th rounder. That's why it's so ridiculous when a Kiren Williams hater comes in and goes, hey, Quorum had hired 80 or NFL draft value. Don't you think they value him more? That's moronic, because Kyron's already exceeded, the expectation level and shown what he can be. McVay has zero interest in even considering where he was drafted. McVay doesn't even think about it. He is a top 5 running back in McVay's eyes, and as long as he's healthy, he's getting the damn rock. So
yeah, I you know what too? Like I feel like with Shanahan, it's almost like Shanahan values like 6th round players more than he does 1st round players. Like. He will make a 6th round guy a starter if he delivers. Like you said.
Yeah, which part of that is, I believe, like, I don't want to say part of that's true because it depends, but some of that has been Adam Peters has put a lot of amazing late round grabs in the lap of the 49ers, and now that he's gone in Washington, that won't be there anymore as much. It could be, maybe the Niners still somehow, some way. I mean, you already had a very, very, in my opinion, you drafted some good players, but you had a bad draft because it was not executed good at all. The DeJean pick, letting him go, was a huge mistake because you still could have got your wide receiver. You still could have, if you didn't get Pearsall, you could have easily still got McConkey. I think he was there at your next pick. I just think that was a big mistake. He was the guy you guys wanted anyway. And I'm not saying that, like, if Adam Peters were there, that wouldn't have necessarily happened, but I don't know, man. I felt like there was a lot of unprepared, I don't know, directions.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of me when I was a kid playing Madden on franchise mode, and I needed all these different team needs, position needs, and I would just draft the 6'5" wide receiver that with 98 speed. You know what I mean?
kind of.
That's kind of like that's
Not
kind
really.
of what it felt like, you know.
I'm not really, don't really know what you mean, but I feel you. I
No, like I'm saying, Kyle just kind of went. It kind of went a little off.
okay, he turned into you and
Just
Madden, you
seemed
mean?
not.
Well, the funny thing about your fan base,
Yeah.
and I love your fan base, obviously. I've got a lot of Niner fans. But what I love about your fan base is you guys pretty much didn't even know who Ricky Pearsall was, and now he's a god to the Niner community. Like, they're posting Pearsall videos left and right. Look
He's
at
the
this
next
guy.
Devo.
You guys didn't know who he
I
was.
bro,
Devo's place.
do you remember when I called? I called in probably, like I said, like 1 or 2 weeks before the draft. I'm like, hey, Smitty, what's up with this Pearsall guy? You've been talking about him and stuff, and then there we go. You know? So yeah, I didn't know.
I
I
went into Raj's
who he
live
was,
and I
too.
said you guys should draft Ricky Pearsall, and they all, no one said anything, and no one remembers that I did it. They're like, we got Pearsall, Smitty. I'm like, I know, I told you about him, just like I told you about Ayuk. But Ricky's Ricky's a good pick. Look, you took Guerendo and you took Ricky Pearsall. You took two guys I really, really liked. So the Niners couldn't have. I may have been a little hard on your draft at first, but at the end of the day, you got two fantastic players that I really like. It just feels like you guys gave up your first round pick and started drafting in round 2 and started drafting good. But it feels like you got rid of your first round pick. When someone says, "Hey, Smitty, I got St. Brown, I've got Saquon Barkley," and I'm like, "All right, good. You got a first rounder. That's great. You got a second rounder. You're on par. You haven't been reaching." And then their third round pick is Michael Pittman. Hold on. I'm trying to make a point here. And then your third round pick's Michael Pittman, and your fourth round pick is, I don't know, AR5 or something. And then I'm like, okay, so you got St. Brown, Barkley, Michael Pittman, AR5. Like, I like the players you have. You just like the Niners. You drafted AR5, I love him. You drafted St. Brown, I love him. You drafted Barkley, I love him. But where in the hell is your third round player? That's not Michael Pittman. Where's your fourth round player? That's not AR5. You completely reached like hell and ruined your opportunity. That's how I feel about the Niners. I feel like the Niners, they got Pearsall. He's a second rounder. You should have got DeJean and Pearsall, DeJean and McConkey, like something to that degree. And then boom, you're back. You got one of the best cornerbacks, if not the best cornerback, in my opinion, in the draft. The Eagles just played everybody. And it's funny to watch the Niner fan base have no idea the Eagles are building something absolutely unstoppable. And they just think, oh, the Eagles fell apart. Like, oh, they don't have anything. Like, oh, Barkley, I'm not worried about Barkley. Like, it's just delusion 101.
That's cool, man. Also, too, I was going to say, you said, I think it was a couple of days ago, you were talking about how last season you kind of went more towards just like talent over like coaching situations and how you made that whole coaching board.
Yeah.
That I respect that because it's hard. It's hard to not overlook that talent. Even in a bad situation, talent could still do good even in a bad situation. But I do like how you did that this year. That's a cool move you made.
It's an accoutrement. It's not necessarily a defined direction that I'll go no matter what. It's just merely like last year, I would have been more apt to be like, even if let's say Arthur Smith had did what he did the year prior somewhere else, and he went to the Falcons to be the head coach. I believe I would have been last year, doesn't matter, Bijan's going to shine through, like, instead of being cautious with it. And all I'm saying is, like, when there's a significant concern, then I'm weighing the coaching and situation surroundings way more than I did last year. It's not that I can't overlook it if I green light it and go, you know what? Similar to the Arthur Smith going to Pittsburgh, like that took some dissecting. I wasn't just gonna ignore it. I wasn't just gonna say that it's a closed book and I'm closing the door on all Pittsburgh Steelers. Like that, a lot of that has to do with Mike Sullivan. And as I've said, if Mike Sullivan, it comes out that Arthur Smith is calling all the plays, and I don't know if anybody has that information anywhere. I've looked for it. I don't know that it's even going to be readily available. But if Arthur Smith is calling all the plays, I think I'm probably gonna be very, very concerned across the board. I think if he's calling the running plays, and I hate that he's the OC by name. I don't know why. If for any reason Mike Sullivan's going to be more in charge of the passing attack than Arthur, then why give? I don't know. Maybe that's what Arthur demanded. Like, if you want me to fix the running game, which I'm okay with that. I don't love it for Bijan and Warren because you won't know who the starter is, but like, could it produce? I mean, look, Arthur Smith's run attacks produce, but are they frustrating from a fantasy perspective? 100,000%. But Warren and the good thing you could say about like that situation is that Warren and Najee are so similar in talent that I think Arthur can't screw that up. Bijan and Algier and Cordero Patterson were miles and miles apart in talent, and him not knowing which one was better, he screwed it up. Like, whereas if he messes up and starts Warren all year, we're fine. If he messes up and starts Najee all year, we're fine. Who's the third running back on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster? What's his name again? We got to worry about him, though. But he might be the best goal line back in the league, according to Arthur. But I don't know. Like, I just think situation definitely has to play into it. And I'm trying to do a better job of not allowing the talent to overrule everything. But I'm still always going to let talent weigh more. And so in the situation of like Neighbors, as much as I want Neighbors to be as good as Neighbors could be, we cannot let Danny Dimes and that offense, what we just saw them do to everybody there last year and what we saw Barkley suffer through for years, not getting near the end zone. We can't let ourselves, I think, our guard down and just say Neighbors is scoring 14, 15 touchdowns because he's that good. I don't think we can do that. I don't know.
Hey, what about, I haven't heard you talk about Malik. Well, I know he went to a pretty crowded receiver room. And
Miami?
Now they got Odell, I think. Yeah, but Malik Washington, I haven't heard you talk. Maybe I missed it, but you think he has, a future in a couple years in Miami? I think he looks pretty good.
Maybe. I mean, he's not anywhere near, a place that can, like, he'd have to have a significant injury happen for me to even really start entertaining it. From a dynasty perspective, I'll scoop him up, sure, but he was always kind of on a lot of people's radars for being in the Tank Dell conversation, like, who's the next Tank Dell? And I'd never say his name, even though I liked him, but I'd always leave him off and say Corley, Ricky Pearsall, and McConkey. Those would be like the three really easy names for the next Tank Dell. And people would always say, Malik Washington, why are you leaving off Malik Washington? But I mean, bro, he's in a crowded. Not only is he not the number one or number two or probably number three receiving option, but in terms of like getting targets, you've got Mostert, you've got Achane, and you've now got probably Wright that are all going to be more of a priority to catch passes than him. So like, he's so far away from anything positive. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'd have to see him.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about anytime soon, but like maybe,
it's like throwing a dart at the dartboard, bro. I don't know. I think, but in 2 years he could have no motivation. In 2 years he could not have blossomed at all and lost all of his. Look at N'Keal Harry. Yeah. N'Keal Harry was probably one of the wide receivers I feel got missed on the most by not only a coaching staff and a team, but himself. Allowing himself to not be hungry and figure out a way to move around a situation. But New England is a place where a lot of wide receivers go to die. And we're hoping for Travis's sake that changes now. But, I mean, N'Keal Harry was one of the biggest wastes of talent I've ever seen in my life in 25 years. That guy was so talented and he did nothing. So, like, yeah, I've seen some amazing talent just dissolve away, you know, by not being used in a proper amount of time.
What about just straight off talent, though, just hypothetically, just off of his talent? Let's say he went to like the Chargers, like a place where it's not crowded. Would you be talking differently about him?
No, it's a horrible situation. Like if he was the lone starter there, then, you know, maybe, but like I don't know that he'd be used. I mean, we don't know what. I don't know, bro.
Say he went to the Bills, I think something like that. You know?
Sure, I'd be a lot higher on him, but he didn't. So, like, I don't know. I mean, the hypotheticals are fun, but like he didn't. I didn't love him before, and he didn't. So, you're not going to get the answer you probably are trying to get out of me. He's okay. I need to see him develop. He's one of those guys that maybe 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, something intrigues me about him, and I could get there. I'm not saying the door is closed. I'm not saying I don't like him, but there's nothing right now that I feel 2024, you know, capable. And so from there, it's like in Dynasty, am I taking him where I'm taking, let's say, I mean, throw out some Dynasty wide receivers or rookie wide receivers near his area, and I'll tell you if I like him over them. You know, like list off some deep dive guys like Polk, for example. I'd rather a Polk. Baker, I'd rather Baker. They're in better spots. They're more likely to get a shot before he is.
I don't. Yeah, he went to a bad spot. There's
like Brandon. How about Brandon Rice? How about Brandon Rice or like Jacob Cowing? Like then I'm maybe saying okay, I might take him. You know, Brandon Rice and him are about the same to me. Yeah, Walker. Those are all very, very close.
Walker is near him. McMillan. But then, so actually, if I chime in quick, would you rather have those guys, or would you rather take a shot on like an A.T. Perry or a Jalen Hyatt in that range?
Maybe not.
I'll just kind of.
Maybe not those guys, but let me find a guy that is that deep that I can answer that and say
Malik
yes.
Washington is 207 is his ADP, so I was just kind of searching around those like 30, 40 picks in that range. Corley's 170, Luke McCaffrey 179.
Like, give me I don't know, Christian Watson, how much, I guess that he's probably not that crazy far off from Christian Watson's value, maybe, but maybe he is. I don't know. Like, I'd rather have a Christian Watson. I'd rather have a guy that has a shot.
86.
Where did you say the other guy, or Malik Washington was?
207. 86.
Jeez. God, yeah, he's so far.
Yeah,
Christian Watson's really climbing into the 80s. He was so far down like a month or two ago, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Give me. What about Baker?
So what about like?
Is Baker that low?
Baker he's 184.
He's so much higher than him. Wow.
Let me see. I'll tell you the guys right around him for wide receivers.
I like Devon Baker way more.
The five guys before him are Tyler Boyd, Odell Beckham, Devontae Walker, Demarcus Robinson.
I mean, I'd take him right.
DJ Chark, Brendan
I'd take
Rice.
him right there. I'd take him right there. I'd take him over DJ Chark all day long. Would I take like McMillan? Jalen McMillan?
He's right past.
He went to Tampa. I'd probably take McMillan. I think maybe over him, maybe. But like that's where it is. But that's it. I mean, like we're just talking. You know, we're just running.
We're just shooting the breeze. Hey, Smitty. I just one more question before. Where did the mashed potatoes thing come from? When people do
it's like a lot. It's been used a lot, like in history in a bunch of different like old school videos, like back in the day. Like people have yelled that through a course of history. Not quite the way we do it,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
a lot of
no,
stuff
it's
comes
great.
from movie references and things like that. I mean, we do a lot of original stuff here, but you know that one in particular, like people have yelled mashed potatoes before. A lot of golf courses and people swing. Rasheed Rice is innocent, says Air. I've never. Has anybody ever recognized this guy before? It's always someone we don't know. I think that was the guy that came in earlier. Rasheed Rice is innocent. How many shares do you have? How many leagues do you own him in, Air? Unbelievable. Hit that
Hey,
thumb up
Randy
button.
Moss, though, you were talking about Randy Moss and
Yeah.
Jerry Rice, Smitty.
Yeah.
Man, Randy Moss. He changed the way. He's the only player, probably in NFL history, that coined like a move of, you know what I mean? Like you got Moss, and people are still saying you got Moss to this day. Probably not as much, but
I mean,
that's
Jerry
like-
was definitely, you know, I get where the argument's going to come, especially from a Niner fan, like not necessarily saying you, but you have that conversation with a Niner fan and they just lose their mind. But like
Moss was more of my.
I've watched both of them. It's not like I wasn't there for the Jerry Rice days. Like I watched football. I've watched both of them play. This isn't like the Jordan and LeBron debate where a 20-year-old kid's like, LeBron's the best ever. And you're like, you weren't even alive when Jordan was playing. You can't even make this claim. I watched both of them play. And Jerry Rice was amazing. And his game speed was, you can't even measure it. You know, again, kind of think of like Keon Coleman. Like if we could have measured things like that with Rice, we would have a whole lot. I mean, they could go back and watch the film and do it. But Rice was just unbelievably efficient. And he just did it longer than anybody too. And so like the stat wise, like nobody's going to be able to do what he did. Like he's just so unreal. But Moss was just a different player that could pull in a touchdown when your life was on the line and the ball was in the air. You knew he was going to grab the ball and be in the end zone. Like it was just same thing with Priest Holmes. When Priest Holmes would get a carry near the 10, 15 yard line, it was a sweep or it was a halfback plunge or whatever. And Holmes would literally go untouched from like the 15-yard line in. Anytime Priest Holmes got a carry, you stood up at the sports bar because that's where you watched it back then. Because that was the way to really watch football. You go to the sports bar, you go to your in-person drafts, and as soon as the Priest would get a carry, I'd scoop my stool out and I'd stand up and I'd be ready to clap if you got it anywhere from the 15-yard line or in, and I was ready to clap for the touchdown. Just automatic. Holmes and Moss were just on a whole nother level, but Holmes was not the elite talent that like Barry was, and so sometimes situation made somebody way better than they were. Arian Foster and Priest Holmes were nowhere near Barry Sanders. Emmitt Smith was unbelievable, but Barry Sanders was physically much better. It's just Emmitt had an elite situation mixed with being very, very good. He was elite, but Sanders was way better. Marshall Faulk was light years ahead and better than Arian Foster and Priest Holmes. But Arian Foster and Priest Holmes had just as good of fantasy seasons. So, all right. Hey, Young, I'm going to let you go, pal. Appreciate you.
All right, Smitty,
All
see
right,
you.
later. Rock out. You got anything else?
Yeah, what's your thoughts on Robin Wilson for the Steelers as like the number 2?
Yeah, I like him. I think he's good. I think he reminds me a little bit of Pitman in that I think people, and I'm not saying he'll ever be Pitman yet. I think that would be his ceiling, but I'm not going to hand him that. He's got to earn that. But I feel like a lot of people think he could be better. I just think that's probably where his ceiling is. I don't see like a top 5-7 potential guy. I don't see London in Roman Wilson, but I think Roman Wilson could be like, if all goes well, a Michael Pittman. I just think Pickens is better than him by a lot.
Yeah, obviously number 1 guy.
Yeah. Rock out to the moon. Appreciate you, bro.
Yep, appreciate it.
All right,
Take
later.
care.
Travis, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just two quick things. One, what do you think of? I haven't heard you talk about him much. Germaine Burton, Cincinnati. I know he dropped because of, I don't know, call it off-field issues or personality issues. I don't know what it is, but a lot of places I see he would have been an easy, like, first, second, at worst, third-round pick. Probably first or second-round pick if he hadn't. I don't know, maybe he went in the late second or something. I think he went in like the third or fourth, though. But what do you think of him either way?
Yeah, I mean, he's good, but...
Seems very talented.
Yeah, very talented. I don't think he's ever had even like an 800-yard season, though. So, it's not like we've seen him like blow up and have the stat line that we've needed to see. Whether it's... I think, here's his game log. His most receptions ever in a year was 40.
Right.
His second most was 39. 798 was his biggest receiving season, and 677 was his second biggest. He had 8 touchdowns last year, which is good. But so I don't know. I see something like that, and I just say to myself, like, he looks good, but when you come out of college with no resume, and that's really no resume to me. And you're talking about the best of the best coming out, and you give me a 700-yard I'll say prove it to me before I give you any benefit of the doubt.
Do you like what's his name, Charlie Jones over him still?
Yeah, I do. I think Charlie Jones has a little bit of that
post type stuff.
Well, yeah, like I don't want to say I don't want to say Kiren because I don't want anybody to think I mean he could be that good. I'm just saying the overlooked, rookie year, love him, and we liked Charlie Jones a lot, and then the injuries and everything make Kiren got hurt, and then the second year you just kind of like you screwed me, and so I don't want people to run away from Charlie. Charlie was one of the best receivers in college football, coming out with Tank Dell. It was Charlie Jones and Tank Dell. Their stats were just blowing everybody out of the water. So I like Charlie a lot. I'm not putting Burton over Charlie yet, personally. But I mean, depth chart could change that. I'm not in charge of the depth chart. So what?
Yeah, it'd be interesting in Cincinnati if Higgins could still get traded. Like I know there's a couple teams after. I think it's after the June 1. A lot of cap space opens up. Like the Patriots, for example, have $128 million in cap space after June 1st, I think it is. So Higgins could still move, and if he does, that depth chart gets kind of interesting with Jones and Burton and what's his Iosivas or whatever, Andre, and there's a few guys in that could kind of come out of nowhere in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow throwing them the ball.
Yeah.
And the last thing real quick was, do you think, like going forward with the combine and scouting players, do you think, like I know the 40-yard dash will always be there, but do you think with like the on-field GPS and the gauntlet drills and stuff like that, do you think people are going to start relying on that type of stuff more heavily, or do you think it'll just always be the 40-yard?
I think the results of what that tells us. So if Keon Coleman comes out and becomes a absolute superstar, then people will say, hey, who was the number one in this category last year? Keon Coleman. Look at that. You know what I mean? So it's going to all be about reflection on the data.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's I can't remember what it was. There's a certain drill at the combine too where
the gauntlet.
If a lineman scores a certain something in the last several years, the best linemen have dominated that one drill. And so they're starting to look at that for linemen now. And you see with the receivers, the gauntlet drill and the on-field GPS stuff, it's seems like that might tell the story a little bit better than just a straight 40,
Yeah.
I was just curious your opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll find out. I think it's a good indicator right now, but some of the data still needs to be looked at after the fact. So, for example, Jalen Wright, fastest 40 time of the first 5 yards, but, still a good 40 time. So what does that mean?
that too.
You know, does he hit the hole quicker than anybody? The answer is yeah. And so how will that translate? And if it translates, he takes Mostert's job, you know, pretty quickly or something, or Mostert gets hurt and he keeps the job or whatever. And I don't think it affects Achane all that much at all. But then we'll be what they're gonna do is when they look at that data. I don't even know how many people would go into the combine thinking it top of mind, but like even if they didn't, and they said, okay, here's this drill. What were the finishers last year in the splits? And they're like, oh, look at Jalen Wright. You know, he's a monster in the NFL. Hey, look at Keon Coleman. He's one of the best up-and-coming receivers. And he was, you know, so like it'll all tell a story. And we'll all know about it because people will be talking about it like crazy.
Right. All right. Appreciate it.
All right, later, bro. Appreciate you.
See ya.
Last caller calling in here. Last second. Redwood, you're live. You got about a minute, maybe 30 seconds. What's up, my guy? Appreciate you.
I just had a quick question. I was just wondering how high are you on George Pickens this year?
As high as I need to, or as high as I'm because of Arthur Smith, because I don't know the diva mentality he brings to the table. If Arthur Smith is in charge of the passing attack, I'm going to back off a little bit on my belief in the passing or in the consuming of Steeler players anyway. I think they could still win, and I don't think Tomlin's going to allow him to ruin anything. But I do wonder a little bit. So I'll probably say like I'm going to rank it. I don't find myself drafting him a ton. I want to, but I don't find myself drafting him a ton. He ended up what was he, wide receiver 31 last year? 1,140 yards, 63 receptions, 5 touchdowns. Pretty good year. Like when you look at those numbers, 1,140 and 5. It's not bad. It was still. I mean, like it was 31 though. You know, wide receiver 31. So I guess I'll probably just say, looking at the ADP data and looking at wide receivers and sorting the Underdog Fantasy promo code Smitty ADP data, where they'll match up to 50% now on your first deposit up to $250. So deposit, $100 and you'll get $50. So please head on over there now so you aren't missing out when we do a draft. I don't know if we're doing one tonight, but probably going to leave here in a second. But if we look at the ADP data for George Pickens, I sort by wide receivers on the Underdog ADP. And that Underdog ADP shows me that Pickens is coming in at 47 overall. That's wide receiver 28. And if I look at a draft board, what I say overall?
47.
47. So that puts him right at the end of round 4. That's too high for me.
Oh.
It's just too high.
Yeah, I'm just.
You can't take him as your fourth. You can't take him as your fourth drafted player. I love him. The upside's there, but like the risk is still too high.
Did you say like end of round 4 or beginning?
End of round 4, but even the top of 5, I'm not loving it because you've got Mahomes is still on the board. You've got Pacheco is still on the board. You've got Anthony Richardson still on the board. I mean, I'll just navigate over to quarterback and take a safe player. Rashad White is still there. You could argue that. Rashee Rice is there. Just kidding. Just kidding.
If he falls in the 5th round, you still taking him there?
I don't know. No, not automatically, but probably more likely, yeah. End of round 5, I probably like him there. Because then you're not even like, you're kind of, is he my 5th or he kind of almost my 6th rounder? But I'm not taking him at the top of 5. Like it feels like a 4th round pick. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Round 5, I'm okay.
This is year 3 for Pickens or year 2? I can't remember when he was drafted.
Yeah, he's something to prove this year. You know, it's definitely not. Yeah. It's not something that like he's a mental concern, mental case. You know, he's definitely diva. He's got too much diva going on without having the production. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be this entitled. You know, this is his third. He's going on his third year, and while he does have 1140, like I said, and 5 touchdowns to bring to the table, he has never caught more than 63 passes in a season. So you can't act like you're the best receiver in the league when you're only catching, 63 passes. But, he's going to tell you that he needs the ball more, and it's not his fault. And I don't necessarily disagree with him. But is he going to go about it the right way if Arthur Smith isn't getting him the ball his third year? Or is he going to end up getting himself into some trouble and quitting on plays? And I hate all that. I hate when players quit on plays. Yeah. Perp's in the building.
Oh, yeah.
Perp says, I know I haven't been here a lot lately, but you are very active in the chat, and your football IQ is that. Sorry it came out across that way. It didn't on purpose. Perps is trying to mend fences, I think. All right. Anything else, bro?
No, that's all I have for me. Thanks for your time.
All right, bro. Later.
I'm good.
Yeah. Pitman. George Pickens is a hard one to navigate. We can do a private league real quick draft. I'll drop a private link right now. So we're going to do NFL. I'm just not going to do a whole live draft here, but these are fun too. NFL, $3, 12-person slow. These take a little bit to fill. Like, I'll have to put it on my Instagram stories potentially. We got a lot of people in here. We got 136. We probably be able to get this filled immediately, I would guess. Here it is. $3, private league. Will take us all the way to week 17 together. This isn't a big tournament, so the winner only gets like $20 or something like that. But that's okay because it's a fun league. You can even retitle it by hitting the info icon and renaming it, and then that way you can keep track of this league and be like, hey, did I smash Smitty to pieces in that league? So 11 more to start. I just dropped it. 10 more to start. Jump in to the private league, and if it doesn't fill while we're live on this show, and I may show the first round or two if we fill it that quickly, but I will put it on my Instagram stories. It will get filled, and it's a slow draft, so no one's going to miss the pick or anything. It's a slow draft. I made sure of it. It's a slow one for sure. All right, hit the link. I'll drop it one more time. It looks like it's gonna take a little while to fill it. That's the link. Jump in, hit the link. Underdog Fantasy promo code Smitty. I should have did this at the beginning of the show because what's the harm in filling the draft while we're waiting here talking? I'll do that next time. I'm sorry. I'll see you all tomorrow. There'll be some sort of news midday that I'm breaking. I know it. And then I'll be back for the 8 p.m. show tomorrow, and then probably be back again for the evening show. So very good chance you see me 3 times tomorrow, at least twice. Jaden Daniels officially got the number 5 jersey. Yeah, that news was nice. Thank God we don't have to change all these videos we got here like this one.
There are 2 5s? JD 5, AR 5? There can't be.
Oh no. They're gonna cross streams. I'll see you all later. Appreciate you. Hit that thumb up button on the way out the door. Here's the link one more time. 6 more to start. 6 more to start. Jump into the league. See you all later. Thank you, Rockout, for dropping that super chat. Thank you, Rockout, for dropping the first one of the night. And thank you, Elvis, for dropping back-to-back-to-back super chats. You are the man. I'm glad to see Perps up in here. Glad to see a bunch of you in here. Thanks, Travis, for moderating. Thank you, Sick Nasty. Thank you, Hoosiers, for being here. Thank you, John and Joshua and all the gang, and Blackbeard being in here. Blackbeard to the moon. Thank you for moderating as well. I don't know if I've got other mods in here. Space Ricky's in here. I'm not sure. I don't know where some of you guys are. if you're in here. But thank you all for being here. We'll see you all tomorrow. 4 more to start. I'll drop the link one more time. Jump in, jump in, jump in. By the way, if anybody needs a new show, you guys know I'm your show guru. I feel like I'm as good at predicting, or not predicting. I'm as good as at telling you good shows to watch, like TV. And I can't vouch for this one yet entirely. Sometimes it takes a couple episodes, and I'm only 1.5 in. But Dark Matter on Apple TV Plus. Dark Matter, it's brand new. I think there was a Dark Matter show, another show called Dark Matter back in the day, like 5 to 8 years ago or something. But this one's brand new on Apple Plus called Dark Matter. It's pretty damn good so far. I don't know where it's gonna go. It could take a turn and be bad, but I've been watching that. If anybody needs a good show, Apple TV Plus, Dark Matter. Do it live. See you all tomorrow. Four more to start. Here's the link one more time. I don't know where Vampy is. We've been looking for him. I'm getting concerned. All right, see you all tomorrow.